Before I turn to our assessment of the elections, I would like to say three things. First, on behalf of the mission, may I once again offer our sincere condolences to those who were injured in the attacks in Balochistan on election day and to the families and friends of those who lost their lives. As I said on Wednesday, these were despicable and cowardly attacks on a day when voters across Pakistan should have been able to cast their ballots in a peaceful environment. Second, it's important to note that this assessment of the elections is issued before the end of the electoral process. Our final assessment of the elections will depend on the conduct of the remaining stages of the electoral process, the tallying of results, the official announcement of results, and the handling of any election complaints and appeals. Finally, before turning to our assessment of the elections, I want to mention once again what the delayed deployment of our observers has meant for our assessment of some aspects of the electoral process. Unlike previous election observation missions to Pakistan in 2002, 8, and 13, the EU EOM this time faced unprecedented delay in the deployment of its observers. EU observation methodology focuses on comprehensive observation, with long-term observers deployed 4 to 5 weeks before election day in order to cover all stages of an election process. However, due to a series of bureaucratic delays, the mission's long-term observers were deployed to districts only 1 week, sometimes less, before election day. This has had significant repercussions on our ability to observe and fully assess some fundamental areas of the electoral process. These include the candidate nomination process, the campaign environment in different parts of the country, as well as the work of the election administration at local level. Our assessment is the result of the findings and analysis of a team which, when it was at full strength on election day, comprised 120 observers. They were in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Islamabad, Sindh, and Punjab. On election day, our team visited 582 polling stations and tabulation centers. We visited 113 different constituencies. And so to our assessment now, both the pre-election period and election day itself, but please do remember the vital caveat I outlined just a moment ago, that the process is not yet over. Our mandate as an election observation mission is to accompany an electoral process and conduct an independent and objective assessment of it in accordance with the laws of Pakistan and with the international and regional commitments to which Pakistan is a signatory. The 25 July general elections were significant for marking the second consecutive civilian-to-civilian handover of power. It is our assessment that despite positive changes to the legal framework with the new Elections Act and a stronger and more transparent election commission, the electoral process of 2018 was negatively affected by the political environment. A number of violent attacks targeting political parties, party leaders, candidates, and election officials severely affected the campaign environment. Many of our interlocutors acknowledged a systematic effort to undermine the former ruling party through cases of corruption, contempt of court, and terrorist charges against its leaders and candidates. Positively, we would like to praise the work of the Election Commission of Pakistan over the last few years. It has undertaken many initiatives to improve accountability and transparency, including the participation of women and minorities. There is no doubt that levels of confidence in the ECP have increased due to regular consultations with political parties and civil society organizations. Although steps were taken to ensure participation of minorities in the electoral process, the situation of the Ahmadi community unfortunately remains unchanged. They are still registered on a separate electoral roll, contrary to constitutional provisions on the equality of citizens and against international law. Although there were several legal provisions aimed at ensuring a level playing field, we have concluded that there was a lack of equality of opportunity. Candidates with large political appeal and financial means, the so-called electables, often dominated the campaign, and uneven rules on campaign spending further undermined equal opportunity for candidates. Political parties were at times prevented from holding rallies. People have a constitutional right to peaceful assembly. We understand the necessity to maintain law and order, but citizens' constitutional rights must also not be curtailed. The legal framework unduly restricts freedom of expression. Media outlets and journalists suffered from restrictions which led to self-censorship. This resulted in election coverage without impartial scrutiny. Paid-for content and partisan debate shows overshadowed news programs. The PTI, PMLN, and PPP joint share of exposure in the news reached 81%, which may have impeded voters in making an informed choice. On election day, voting was assessed as well conducted and transparent. However, counting was somewhat problematic, with staff not always following the procedures. In the polling stations, we observed security personnel were present inside and outside all polling stations. However, as should be the case in a civilian exercise, the mission observed also that it was the presiding officers who were in charge. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, EU observation missions have no interest in the result of an election. We have no interest in seeing this or that candidate or party win. That is up to the citizens, the voters of Pakistan. We are interested in the electoral process alone, nothing more, nothing less. Our long-term observers will remain in districts across Pakistan for another week or so, where they will continue to observe the tabulation of results and any election complaints and appeals. They will meet with parties and election officials. The core team of election analysts in Islamabad will stay in Pakistan throughout August into early September. The final EU report on the elections due later this year will make recommendations for consideration to improve future electoral processes. The EU stands ready to continue its dialogue with Pakistan to assist democratic reform. It encourages politicians, the Election Commission of Pakistan, and all stakeholders to work together constructively and peacefully towards this aim. Before I hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Lambert, I would like to conclude by paying tribute to the hard work and professionalism of polling station staff and party agents who worked such long hours on election day, and to the citizens of Pakistan for showing their commitment to the democratic process and polling stations across the country on the 25th of July. Thank you very much. Bahut shukriya. So you pass it on to, yeah?
Well, thank you very much, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, and thank you for the interest that you've shown in this press conference. As Chair of the European Parliament's observation team, part of the overall EOM, I have the honour of speaking on behalf of myself and my 6 colleagues, my fellow MEPs here. Since our arrival in Pakistan on Monday morning, we've met with politicians, the Election Commission of Pakistan, with civil society, the media, and of course observed election day from start to finish. The European Parliament delegation fully supports the preliminary findings and conclusions of the EU Election Observation Mission. I would also like to express my appreciation of the excellent work carried out by my colleague, Mr. Michael Garland, the OM Chief Observer, and all his team. The Chief Observer has already given a thorough overview of the mission's preliminary findings, and I therefore wish to focus on a few issues relating both to Election Day and issues discussed during our earlier meetings. I'd also like to preface my words on Election Day by stressing that our assessment should be seen within the overall context of the comments of the Chief Observer on the long-term framework underpinning the election. And at this point, we would also like to join with the Chief Observer in strongly condemning the violence that's been present during the election campaign and the terrible loss of life in Balochistan on Election Day itself. And our deepest sympathies are with the victims of these appalling atrocities, their families and their friends. On Wednesday, we divided into 3 teams, observed in a number of polling stations in and around the capital, Rawalpindi and in Jammu. And we wish to commend in particular the commitment of the voters who cast their ballots, particularly those with disabilities, who displayed great courage to make sure that they could participate, often in places where access to the polling stations was very difficult. And although we did notice that, for example, ramps had been installed in some polling stations, we urge those concerned to continue with the work on improving access. We were pleased too that so many women came out and voted in the polling stations that we observed, although we're concerned that this wasn't the case everywhere in the country, and that there are reports that at least 2 National Assembly constituencies, there even to the statutory 10% threshold of Tehran women, was not reached. We appreciate the efforts made by the Electoral Commission to aim for greater inclusion in the electoral process for all, and particularly through the Gender and Disabilities Working Group, and look forward to further progress. After all, the 5% quota for women candidates is just a starting point, and more in winnable seats would be very welcome. I'll say that again, just in case you didn't hear it properly, that after all, the 5% quota for women candidates is just a starting point, and more in winnable seats would be welcome. And these observers, of course, have an important role in ensuring public confidence in the electoral process, and we trust they'll be able to play a full role in future elections. We were struck by the significant security presence at polling stations. We do understand the need for security. However, elections are an act of civil society, and we look forward to a move of greater civilian rather than military oversight, particularly inside the stations where people are casting their ballot. And one issue that we feel needs attention when preparing for future elections is the presence of political party camps. Some of those we saw were located closer to the polling stations than they should be, and we also had reservations about the system whereby political parties give paper slips to voters before they cast their ballots. We understand this has been a traditional custom in Pakistan. However, we're concerned that many voters see the practice as obligatory, and there are worries that it might have an impact on the secrecy of the ballot. However, an election, of course, is not only about what happens on one day, and I wish to underline that we share the concerns expressed by the Chief Observer about aspects of the pre-election environment. And we look forward to the final report of the Election Observation Mission and the recommendations it will contain. And these recommendations will also play a part in the GSP Plus monitoring process, in which the European Parliament is a stakeholder. Looking ahead, and speaking both as the head of the NEP Observer Delegation and also as chair of the European Parliament Standing Delegation for Relations with Countries of South Asia, I would like to underline that the European Parliament is committed to developing its relations on a cross-party basis with the newly elected Parliament. We were pleased that Friends of the EU Group was established in the previous Parliament, and we look forward to working with that in the new one. Thank you for your attention, and I now hand back for your questions.